Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. They say money doesn't grow on trees, but your forest could bring in extra cash just by being a forest and at the same time offer climate benefits. A family forest carbon program is now opening the way for landowners with 30 forested acres or more to be eligible for carbon credits in concert with current use regulations. Our beautiful forests continue to give back in so many ways. To give us the details, we are joined by Jim Shallow. He's the Director of Strategic Conservation Initiatives at the Nature Conservancy of Vermont. And Richard Campbell is Director in the Family Forest Carbon Program with American Forest Foundation. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
So, Jim, we'll start with you. And carbon credits can seem like a far-fetched way to make money from forests. And in a way, first off, so could you explain what carbon credits are and how that market has matured and stabilized over the last few years?
Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty complex subject, but basically, we are facing a climate crisis. We know that the globe is warming up, and that's largely due to our emitting fossil fuels, and that carbon's building up in the atmosphere and kind of acting like a thicker and thicker blanket around us and holding that heat in. So we know that to address this crisis, we need to both reduce the amount of fossil fuels we're using, but we also need to start removing the carbon that we've already put in the atmosphere over the last 100+ years. So one way we can do that is use nature. And nature has been shown that we could probably remove about 1/3 of what we need to from the atmosphere just by using growing trees and improved agricultural practices across the globe. So the way that this works is that we now have companies and countries that are looking to get as close to carbon neutral as possible. And so they're doing this by taking the carbon that the trees are sequestering and hold that and then calculate how much that is. And then that becomes a credit that companies can use to help meet their goals to be carbon neutral. They'll be doing all sorts of other things like switching off of fossil fuels and, improving their electricity use and everything like that. But we just don't have all the technologies we need to go completely carbon neutral. So these carbon credits, offsets, as some people call them, are a way to transition into this new future that we need to be in. So the markets basically have a way to account for the carbon that's being stored and sequestered, and then those become registered on various registries that can then be traded and sold in the marketplace as companies calculate what they need, and then they purchase those, they retire those credits so nobody else can use them, and all that additional carbon that comes out of these projects is then stored, and we are on our way towards helping address the climate crisis.
Yeah, and we saw some pictures of people actually, the forests are tested and it's very clear how much carbon they are sequestering. So this market is very legitimate and working now. And the Nature Conservancy has been very successful in the carbon market with large tracts of forest in Vermont and other places. And Richard, what changed to get smaller farms into the market?
Thanks, Fran. So that's a really good question. I guess what hasn't changed is the commitment from American Forest Foundation and Nature Conservancy to smaller landowners. AFF has been working with small landowners through the American Tree Farm System for 80 years. And we've always seen the power that family landowners have to deliver meaningful conservation change, meaningful conservation impact. But a couple of things have changed very recently. The first, as you mentioned, is the urgency of the climate crisis. Climate change is here, and it's causing impact, having an effect globally as well as right here in the woods in Vermont. And we need to address that. And the second thing that has changed is the science. We now have the ability to really accurately measure the contributions of small landowners to fighting climate change. And those two things together are what have prompted us to be able to bring this program to the state.
Terrific. And, just the Nature Conservancy produced a video that serves as an introduction to climate smart forestry, of which the carbon program is one option. So we'll take a quick look at that and be right back.
The number of people who personally experience climate change goes up every year. Floods, fires. So what got us into this mess is burning fossil fuels. So the biggest action that we need to take to address climate change is to stop burning fossil fuels. But right now, the only tool that we have that works at cost and at scale to pull that carbon pollution out of the air is nature.
Here in the Northeast, we have these hardwood trees like maple, oak, birch, and they do a tremendous job of holding carbon because all those leaves are pulling that out, and then they store that in their wood, and it's a real dense wood.
And with that diversity comes strength and resilience. And so managing those forests for those qualities over time is going to really help us maximize our climate benefit, as well as maximize the ecological and social benefits we get from the forest.
And it's what takes some revenue to do is to look at the future forest and the resiliency of the forest, and knowing that in terms of forest productivity and in terms of carbon sequestration, all forests are not equal.
Landowners were asking us, I'm concerned about climate change. I have a forest. I know that what I do matters in terms of climate. What do I do and how do I do it?
We want to have as many possibilities as we can going into the future, and we know we don't want to be tied to a diseased forest. That's where we reached out to the Nature Conservancy to see if they could help us diversify and protect the future forest that we envision here.
Family Forest Carbon Program. It's a partnership between American Forest Foundation and the Nature Conservancy that is designed to let small family forest landowners get into the carbon markets, basically to get paid for doing climate smart forestry practices that put more carbon stock on the land. Climate smart forestry does two things. First of all, it makes sure that the carbon stock in the forest, the amount of carbon that's actually stored in there, is maintained or increasing. And at the same time, it also builds the forest's resilience to climate change. So that's its ability to bounce back from climate change disasters.
There's an enormous opportunity to manage our forests to be more productive and more diverse, to manage them for high quality wood and to manage them for carbon storage.
But it all comes down to how do we hold that carbon in the forest and allow it to degrade over time?
I am really excited about this program being the right fit for some of those landowners who just are ready. They want to do climate smart forestry, and they're ready to partner with someone who can help them do it and give them funding to make it happen.
Okay, so we're talking about healthy, resilient forests. Richard, how does the carbon program coordinate with Vermont's current use program, which is designed to keep farm and forest land in production?
Yeah, thanks, Fran. It's a really important question for the state, right? So I guess to start, I'd say, forests provide so many different values to us as a society, right? Climate mitigation is one, and that's what we're here to talk about, but production of timber, wood products is another. And climate smart forestry can help us, both maintain healthy forests and resilient forests, as well as a healthy economy that depends on those forests. And the fact is that most landowners who are likely to be interested in the program are probably already in the state current use program. So we just need to be able to make sure that our program is in alignment with current use for it to be successful. So we've been really working hard at that
No, go ahead. So you really work with people to make this happen.
Yeah, so we've tried to design the offerings to landowners to be in alignment with current use. And we have one particular program we call Enhance Your Woodlands that is designed around active harvest. And that is a program that we think that in many cases will allow landowners to join us and still maintain their current use status. So if where landowners are in current use and are interested in the program, would encourage them to work with us and work with their forester to determine if that alignment exists. And
growing forests also is just letting the forest do what they want or do what they do.
Sure. Yeah, and that's definitely an appropriate strategy in some cases. There's a lot of issues around the length of time that you let forests grow, and the spatial kind of extent that you work with forests in that way. And so it's, talking about this stuff is theoretically it's pretty difficult because everything exists in a place, and all forests are different, all forested stands are different. And so we think we have a couple of general options for landowners. But anybody who's interested in the program, I really will encourage everybody to work with their forester and work with us to determine if it makes sense for them to join the program or not.
So let's get to how do they qualify? How do they find out about this program?
Sure. So the easiest way to do that is to go to our website, familyforestcarbon.org. Oh, look at you put it up.
Yeah.
Thank you. And when you visit that website, there is an interactive map where landowners can identify their properties, and then that will be in touch after that with some information about whether or not this particular program aligns with their property, and then we'll work with them with the next steps for providing the information, the specific information about forest composition that we need. And then work with them to sign up for the program and get under contract with us.
And it's a great, very clear website. And back to you, Jim. So, again, remind us the benefits of carbon credits for the environment and our communities.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, definitely. This is a new tool for landowners and for the conservation community for advancing not only just the carbon solution, the climate solution, but we also have a biodiversity crisis that's going on as well, where we're seeing declines in wildlife across the board. And so this can also help address that. So we have a forest that covers most of our state. 80% of the state is in forest cover. And we know that the best climate solution is to keep that as forests. And so what this does is it allows landowners to get some income for that, and at the same time start to improve the condition of that forest over, many years. Sometimes past practices have changed the forest, or we have, a more simplified forest. And so these practices are really designed to not only hold carbon, but also start to make the forest a little bit more complex. And we know that our wildlife, our birds that come here every year to breed, love a complex forest and love a lot of mess in the forest. And these practices are designed to really help that forest become more complex. But also, and then there's this additional benefit, they make them more resilient to the effects of climate change that we see coming. So as we start to see more intense storms, bigger disturbances, forests that are more complex and more diverse are going to be able to withstand those changes that are coming.
We are so glad that you guys are taking care of our forests and looking at them. The carbon market is good. It's increasing. There's support from from your organization. Thank you so much for joining us and explaining the complexity of carbon credits and how much help they are. Thank you both to Jim and Richard.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Fran.
And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.